Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Pope Francis is arriving in Washington next week. Will his message of social justice appeal to most Catholics? Montgomery County Council is moving forward with a ban on pesticides. As the Silver Spring Transit Center opens, who's responsible for years of delay? And a gang kills a teen in Northern Virginia. Was Trump right about the problems with illegal immigrants? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former executive director of the Maryland Democratic Party and business strategist Rich Parsons, former Republican candidate for state Senate Jerry Cave, Maryland Republican National Committee woman Nicolee Ambrose, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, comes to America next week to speak before Congress. The Argentinian-born Jesuit-trained pontiff has embarked on an effort calling into question the impoverishment of developing countries by the World Economic Order and denouncing the genocide of Christians taking place in the Middle East. Jerry, conservatives have long welcomed the role of the Catholic Church as a conservative bulwark against the insidious influences of the left on social issues. Does this Pope's message of social justice, is that something that conservatives will embrace?
The Pope is the Pope. He's not an economist, he's not a scientist, and apparently he's not much of a historian either. Social justice is like socialism, and socialism has been very successful at killing millions of people and destroying wealth. The only thing in history that has lifted millions of people out of the squalor, which is a norm of human history, has been capitalism. The Pope is judging things. Instead of their results, he's judging based on intentions. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the Pope is supposed to be driving his flock in the opposite direction.
I take it that's a no, Jerry?
I think I answered it very well, but if you want to give me a couple more minutes, I'd be more than happy to address his insanity on global warming.
All right, Rich, according to the Washington Post, Pope Francis's priorities are immigration, poverty, and the environment. Nevertheless, American Catholics seem deeply unhappy with the signals that Francis is sending with his climate change encyclical and his criticism of unbridled growth. Same question, will his message be embraced in America?
Well, first of all, Casey, there's no evidence that Catholics are dissatisfied with this Pope in any way. The vast majority of Catholics believe there is a role for us to play in combating global warming and are perfectly fine with his encyclical. And by the way, including most of the scientists on the planet. But there's also, I think, a lot of embrace for his message of inclusion and taking an active role in the betterment of society. And, you know, social justice is the same as socialism, Jerry? Really? Come on. Thomas Jefferson, the founders of this country, would take big issue with you on that. Social justice is a good thing whether you're right, left, or center.
And I think...
You know what's important?
It's not the same as
Rich
socialism.
To say something that's incorrect. It's not global warming anymore. Since the globe isn't warming, they had to change it to...
I want to hear from Susan.
As a Catholic, I am very pleased with what the Pope is saying. We are now in a world where the fastest growing Catholic continents are Africa and South America, where there is great disparity. However, this Catholic Pope that's coming to the United States is invigorating American Catholics on issues like forgiveness, for getting people into the flock. The Catholic Church looks like a big tent again. He's welcoming LGBT community, he's forgiving sins. He wants to make annulments easier so that Catholics who get a divorce should be able to get the sacraments again. He's doing the right thing, and you know what? You don't have to be a scientist to be able to talk about climate change.
I want to go to Nicolee on this. I mean, Rich said something that I think is debatable as to whether or not his message is being embraced by the majority of Catholics. I think the polls have shown that there is some dissatisfaction, and there's even dissatisfaction in the church hierarchy with his message and the fact that he's not concentrating on religious issues, he's more concentrating on other issues.
I think one of the greatest divine interventions was the 1980s when you had Pope John Paul, Margaret Thatcher, and Ronald Reagan. I miss those days because it led to the tremendous uplifting of millions and millions of people across the planet. So I am a little concerned when this Pope goes to economic issues. He is a product of his environment. He's from a very liberal place. I wish he would stick to the other issues.
And you know
And
what?
Argentina
In the
was a country
80s,
that was supposed to be very prosperous, but they've had no freedom, terrible government, terrible economy. He doesn't know what he's talking about at these issues. He should stick to his knitting.
and you know what? In the 80s, though, I would beg to differ. Catholicism, or the members in the Catholic Church in this country, plummeted. And for the first time, people are coming back.
Nicolee is talking about the role that Pope John played.
No, she was talking
to
about people
destroy
coming to the
communism.
church.
But this
Saving.
Pope has done his homework on that other great thinker of many centuries who championed social justice, the person who I know and love as Jesus Christ. And I think this Pope is very much in keeping with mainstream Christian theology, and it's not just social issues. He's also talking theology.
Forgiveness
and there's
and
nothing,
hope.
there's
No,
nothing,
that was new.
there's nothing
Forgiveness
new
is all
or
part of
different
it.
or
Other
radical.
popes did not study Jesus
Of course
Christ.
did I say that?
That's
You're putting
kinda
words
what
in
I
my
heard.
mouth.
You
no,
are.
you're totally putting words in my mouth. I'm saying this Pope is
good enough
following
at-
the
you're good enough
teachings
at
of
doing
Jesus
yourself.
Christ.
And other popes have not?
Well,
Not to the extent that he is talking
Let him
about
keep talking.
compassion
Nicolee, they're digging
and
their own
love.
grave on
Well,
this.
Christ's teachings really centered around, and this, whether you're Christian or not, this is a matter of what's in the Bible and what Christ said when he was alive and living amongst us. You know, the forgiveness of sins is the hardcore base of a lot of his teachings. Okay? And this Pope is big on forgiveness of sins, not judging people, which a lot of people who claim to be Christians spend an awful lot of
All right,
time
We're
doing.
not
Don't
talking
put that
about
on
that
us.
issue whatsoever. We are talking about, I would certainly hope that the leader of the Roman Catholic Church is an adherent and a follower of Jesus Christ.
You know what?
And I never said any of them weren't. That was you.
We'll talk about this after his message next week because
Right.
we're running out of time right now. And we have to move on to another subject, which is a local subject this time. Council President George Leventhal has proposed to ban non-essential pesticides and has drawn criticism from homeowner associations, soccer leagues, and the lawn care industry, but overwhelming support from a coalition of environmental activists. Montgomery County held a committee session this week on the proposed ban of the certain pesticides and followed up with a press release that trumpeted the fact that 72% of all responses and comments received by the council were in favor of the ban. Susan, normally this council is lockstep to the left. However, a counterproposal by council member Roger Berliner has been introduced that offers an alternative. Why is Berliner doing it, and is it going to pass?
I don't know if it's going to pass. You never know. He proffered a separate legislation because he felt the other went too far. And his comment is that we need in the next 3 years a reduction in pesticides. In 3 years we can work towards that. And the other thing is that, you know, he said that it isn't up to local governments. You know, we have to look at across the nation at toxic chemicals, and that is not something that a county should be doing.
But doesn't that beg the question as to why the county is even involved in here? Because the EPA regulates, the Department of Agriculture
All that is true,
regulates,
but you know what?
and the state of Maryland regulates.
You have
so,
ragged.
so why should the county get involved?
Well, you ragged on the county also in the past when they did things like trans fats, and they're doing it across the country. You ragged on the county council when they did it on things like banning plastic bags, and that's being done across the country
God,
now
I hate
too.
to do this and stick up for you, Casey, but Casey was
Thank you,
right.
Jerry, let me go to Rich on this.
Sure.
There doesn't seem to be a real need for this legislation since the state regulates it, the federal government regulates it. So why are we having this proposal?
Well, you got me, Casey, and I think you are right. You know, and let's look at that other list of nanny state bills this county council has recommended. The cat leash law, we were made fun of on the Letterman show for that one. The outdoor smoking ban, come on. We have a long history in this county, and this is a bit of overkill. You know, there are things, in my own experience, I grow crops on my yard, okay? I'm a hobby farmer. You can't grow apples in this climate without pesticides. It's impossible. And there's no organic substitute. You have to be able to spray them a couple times. George is going to make that illegal. You know, there are soccer fields that simply won't be safe because the turf won't hold up to the heavy pounding and use without some chemicals put on it in moderation. the federal government, the state, several agencies of the state government already are regulating this area, and I think the Attorney General is looking at whether Montgomery County even has the right to regulate this area. I think Berliner's approach is much better, much more flexible, much less like killing a fly with a sledgehammer, which this county council seems to have a unique talent of doing.
Let me ask you the question.
So
that
it's a
Rich
terrible
said he's
idea, and
dummy
there's no
by
basis
why they're
for
doing
it.
They don't deal with the real problems in the county, that the taxes are too high and going to get higher. They don't
Right.
deal with the fact that the traffic is bad
distraction.
and it's going to get worse. And they don't deal with the fact we've got problems in the school. They aren't doing their job, so they're over here mucking around, getting people
And there's no
distracted.
scientific
and it's
basis.
working because now we're talking
And
about
Jerry,
it.
there's no scientific basis that we even have a problem with this.
But Jerry, I think what we have identified as their purpose, which is to make it more expensive to live in Montgomery
And I think
County,
it
Maryland.
I know 10 families
Jerry.
that have moved to Delaware because of the taxes, and half of them
So-
were
so-
Democrats.
We're going to have to wrap it up. It's been a great debate. Thank you so
You have
much.
my blessing.
When we come back from this short break, is there a gang problem in the DMV? And a controversial opening of the Silver Spring Transit Station. Stay tuned.
Did you?
Not lose the war in Vietnam. We quit. And it just made it so much harder for all those guys that were wounded.
You look and you see the guys beside you and around you. We realize you're all Americans. And no longer are you a particular race, you're a soldier.
I became the first resident of the Hanoi Hilton. We're going to come out of there, but we're going to come out of there with our honor.
On Saturday, October 24th, join Bob Schieffer at the universities at Shady Grove as we honor our more than 13,000 Montgomery County veterans.
And welcome back. As the Silver Spring Transit Center is set to open this weekend, the county has filed a $166 million lawsuit against the companies that designed, built, and inspected the construction, contending their collective failure led to 5 years of delay and cost overruns. Rich, who's to blame for these delays?
Well, it's pretty simple, Casey. This is a complicated project that was started years ago, was moving along at a pretty good clip. And then when it came to the construction phase, you had major problems with the architects and the designers designing things that when the contractor went to build it, problems arose. The contractor identified those problems. The back and forth between the people who designed the plans and the people in charge of building the plans and then the people in charge of inspecting the plans, all that communication broke down and we had a fiasco. This is one of the worst managed projects in this county's history. The fault lies squarely on the project managers, whose job it is to coordinate your designer and your construction firm and your inspectors and make sure that communication flows. It is squarely on the county executive's desk and his team that we're supposed to be managing this project. The whole key to project management is communication and stopping those kind of problems and flaws at the design phase before you start doing construction. This happened after phases were already built and it was very expensive to go back and fix it.
Yeah, but the
just
problem-
to be-
Terrible,
just to be-
terrible,
just
terrible
to be-
project management.
Just to be clear, the project managers were
The county.
government.
Yes, the
That's
county
where
government.
I was going. They're
All
only
right,
that is
halfway right
exactly
on this.
it.
They've only
Jerry?
sued half of the people involved.
They should
the
sue themselves.
unindicted co-conspirators were up on the county council, but you don't have anybody again from the business community.
Well-
so why would they
Well,
know
I
anything?
wanna go
Jerry,
down.
it's not the county council. This is the county executive's failure. The council had nothing to do with implementing this project. It's the executive
But
branch
you
problem
function.
is that
when
you
you
have a
sue,
monopoly.
you sue them all.
When you have a monopoly and you have no one who will hold
Oh,
someone
for God's
accountable and you have a one-party system where no one has a voice, there is no opposing side, this is what you get.
Not only
This
the
is
opposing
result.
side doesn't have a voice, the people don't have a
Well,
voice.
you're wrong,
Amen.
Jerry. You're wrong, Jerry, because
We have
I'm going
elections.
to ask this of Susan. Last year in the election, there was strong criticism by the Republican candidate over the handling of this project by Ike Leggett, the current county
The
executive.
Democrats have
And
gerrymandered
was
this
it-
county to the point where there is no elected official to have a voice to then reach
it
to
was
the
a-
level
it
of
was
the
a-
county
it was a-
executive.
It was a county-wide election.
Yes,
Jerry.
but there's
Right.
nobody that can be
no
elected as a
gerrymandering.
Republican
You can't
that can then have
gerrymander
a
the
platform to speak on.
So my suggestion
I
is
wanna-
why don't
He's
we have
asking
a
a question.
two-party system in Montgomery County? Then you might have some accountability.
Okay, well.
Don't
be-
ask
be-
me anything.
before-
Let this cat
before-
fight
Yeah,
go on.
let
I'm
these guys
loving
think
it.
themselves here.
Before we
Casey,
get
I'm
there,
trying to save you
I
from
want
yourself.
to ask Susan, was it fair to criticize the county executive?
Well, an election was held last year, in a primary. There were multiple candidates. County Executive Leggett came out on the top. He then won the general election, and it was thrown against him. I think perhaps that the implementation of the whole thing was probably not done as well as it could be. It is now in the court system, and I am looking forward to that decision is all I can say, because I think that in this issue it is a unique project, and there isn't someone in county government who has that expertise. An expert through an RFP was hired, and obviously, I will reiterate what Rich says. There was a lack of communication.
Wait a minute. Let's be clear here.
Do you want me?
The county? Now, this isn't just a point for you. The county maintains a whole permitting process and a whole inspection division that inspects all the projects that are constructed in Montgomery County. To say that they don't have someone expertise to measure the density of the concrete.
And they did have the expertise. We did, under the previous county executive, a much more complicated construction job called Strathmore Hall, which had all the usual complications of a major construction project, but also had the fine-tuned acoustics of a world-class concert center, which are far more complicated than anything else the county's ever done. That thing came in on time and on budget, and was a brilliant success story. So the county has the expertise within county government to do this right. The problem is here they didn't do it right. They demonstrably failed.
One thing we can
in their
agree
duty.
with up here is that the county has elected the wrong people.
Well, part of that, Jerry.
I didn't say that.
Maybe
The conclusion is inescapable.
All
I'm doing is reiterating, synthesizing what you said.
Jerry, I hate to give political advice for free, but
that, though, unfortunately, and after a while, you cry wolf so many times.
You're painting with too broad a brush, mon cher. Let's stick to the issue.
I would just at the expense
Thank you
at
for
the
agreeing
risk
with me.
of
Let's go to the next subject.
at the risk of giving political advice for free, which I try not to do, Jerry. If the Republicans would run candidates,
It's not the Republicans.
in a high.
The people
let me
in this
talk.
county can't read past the letter D. Pull
If
the
your
lever,
party
that's.
ran some candidates in the most highly educated county
We
in
have
America
run good
who didn't deny
candidates.
science and say things that were patently foolish on national television, if your party didn't have that image, maybe you might do better
Well, hold
than.
on.
You know what? You
One out of
guys
three
wrote the
voters.
book on
I'm thinking
fancy.
of someone like a Rose
Well,
Lee
here
who
we
didn't even
go.
put her name on the ballot.
I'm ignoring you.
Yeah,
Well,
that's great. Let's have a real transparent system where we can't put
I'm glad we've moved topics here, because we're no longer talking.
Now we're going to talk about
about-
No, we are talking
We're no-
about
we're
the
no
root
longer
cause
talk-
of the problem.
We're no longer
We're
talking.
segueing into the root cause of the problem.
About the county executive's office or the county government for a moment. We're going to talk about something that affects national politics and our local community. Republican candidate for president Donald Trump made headlines this summer over his comments about criminal elements in the illegal immigrant community. Immediately after his comments, the national headlines were filled when 32-year-old Catherine Steinle was murdered by an illegal alien. And now recently, a 17-year-old boy in Loudoun County from El Salvador was killed allegedly for his refusal to join a Hispanic gang. A 2008 report by a member of the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office supports the perception that Montgomery County has a gang problem. Nicolee, let's first address the Trump contention that because of the criminal element in the illegal alien community, there's a problem that can no longer be ignored. Is he right?
This problem has been ignored for way too long. It's embarrassing that the United States is a sovereign nation, really that any sovereign nation would not protect and control its borders. And I foremost view this as a national security issue, especially in this day and age with all the threats against our country. But secondly, it's just so sad. For decades, it has been on the regulatory agenda of the United States Department of Labor to amend our visa laws, to allow more skilled workers in all different categories to come in and provide services for the needs we know we have. This is something I think is a nonpartisan issue. I don't know why we can't just adjust these numbers and get it through. And at least that's a step in the right direction.
It would be a nonpartisan issue, but the more illegal immigrants you bring in, the more you give amnesty to, the more Democratic voters the Democrats get, and the more cheap labor the Chamber of Commerce gets, and a pox on both houses
It
for the
should
reason.
be a nonpartisan
This
issue, but it
is a
isn't, because the
one
Republican Party
American
leadership
dies
won't move
from
the
an
bill that you
illegal
just
immigrant.
described.
This thing should be thrown out, and everybody who's responsible for it should be thrown out too.
So
it hurts jobs, it hurts the country,
What-
it's bad on security, and you can't have people in this country get killed when the other people doing it should not even be here.
Oh, unless they're
No, they
native-born
shouldn't be
Americans
here.
using guns that your party wants to make sure every single
Don't
person
go off
has.
on a
So,
subject
yeah.
The rhetoric.
and don't make light of it. You can't go into Mexico. You break into Mexico and do this, you go to prison.
Well,
You go into the rest of the world, they don't let this happen.
This rhetoric.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'd like to bring this back to
The present.
to Susan. Thankfully, the most recent incident that we talked about in Loudoun County did not occur here. But we have seen a similar type assault 2 years ago in Silver Spring. So do we have a local gang problem?
In Montgomery County, to the best of my understanding, there are white gangs, there are Latino gangs, there are Asian gangs, and there are black gangs.
So is that a yes?
Yes. Now,
There is a
I
gang
want to
problem
go
in Montgomery
back to
County.
this issue of the illegal immigrant. The most recent study that came out, and it is in the Journal of Adolescence, and I've forgotten the second part, it is shown that first-generation immigrants in this country commit crimes at a far lower rate and have a less likely rate of committing further crimes than second-generation immigrants and Native Americans.
Well, what's the point with that,
So the
Susan?
point
Susan,
is you
that's
are
just a statistic.
There's scapegoating going
you're
on here. That's the
scapegoating
point.
immigrants.
Are we
Yes, you are.
scapegoating?
And let
Yes.
me finish. And Jerry,
Fine.
be quiet.
Yeah,
What
but
is it?
Are you saying that illegal aliens who commit felonies, who commit murders,
There,
should
let-
remain in
no,
this
of
country?
course,
Casey,
no one's
let
saying
me
that. That's
finish.
a straw man. That's
He-
a straw
Well,
man.
the
Let her
administration is
finish.
saying
That
No, they're
guy
not.
is
Let her-
going to
let her
go to
finish.
prison. But
Of
what
course
I'm
he is.
saying is we don't have this same outrage when you look at wait a minute, let me finish. The shooting in Arizona with Gabby Giffords,
Right.
the Connecticut shooting.
You didn't have an outrage when Gabby Giffords
There was no
shot?
response.
There
no
was no
legislation.
response. And how many times
No
do
response from
people?
What's the
Congress.
response that you're looking for?
Some kind of effort to maintain public safety, perhaps, would
And
have been
gun
nice.
reform,
but
perhaps.
I'm with Susan on this. I think there's a lot of
Maybe gun
scapegoating.
reform isn't the answer to that
Jerry,
question is the
let
problem.
someone else talk. You know, there are a lot of statistics out there. Susan is correct. There's no evidence that immigrants in general are committing
First-generation immigrants,
well,
yeah.
or immigrants in general are committing more crimes than
We
Native
are
American
so
citizens.
That's what I'm
off-topic
saying.
here.
Okay,
Here's the
illegal.
question. Is it
First
not an
generation-
issue
No, no, no,
for
no.
you
You
guard
call what
the
you
What you
border
started-
and know who is in your country?
Of course, that's
Thank
that's
you.
a
That's
legitimate
really
thing.
the only
Oh,
issue.
that's not
Except
the only
you
issue.
talk about people
That's
in
not
this
the only
country.
issue.
No,
No,
that
we
is
talk about
the
illegal
basis
No,
of
that
the
is-
issue.
that is not
Jerry,
the
you
only issue.
talk
Know who
about
is in this
You know,
country.
You are
That's the
talking-
issue.
This is out of control.
Nobody can hear anything.
You know what? You talk
great
about
theater.
illegal immigrants, or as Casey says, illegal aliens, and you always
Better.
talk about Latinos. But if you start looking at,
We didn't
we
say that.
have
saying that
We
at all.
didn't
No, no,
mention that. That's
Let her
what
talk.
you
No,
said.
let her
will
talk.
you let me finish, Jerry? But we don't talk about the French or the Australians or the Canadians. They're here just as much illegally, but for some reason you aren't all over them. And
Well, if
God-
I-
Susan, you don't have the right to put words in our mouth. I've been on this show for years and I've never said Latinos. And
well-
neither has Nicolee.
The
Well, can I
issue
finish
is
getting
Donald
back to
Trump
you?
did.
and it is a federal priority and requirement. The federal government should take care of our
And
sovereign
why aren't
borders.
the Republicans cooperating with the president then when he has asked for this over and over and over? And
Why
Mitch
did
have
the-
comprehensive
why
McConnell
did the
immigration
Democrats
reform.
cooperate with President Bush when he asked for it too?
Casey,
It's a
look,
partisan
look,
issue.
it
Let's
is
not
it is a
kid
partisan
ourselves.
issue, and
There aren't any Republican
before I got
enclaves
cut off
with,
before I got cut off last
we gotta
time,
go, and Rich, you
before I
wrap
got
it
cut
up.
off last time, Nicolee raised the point about it being a bipartisan issue. It is not a bipartisan issue. Comprehensive immigration reform has been derailed multiple times by the
by
Republicans,
the Democrats
by the
because
Republicans
they
in
only want to
Congress.
buy votes.
All right.
That's it.
We got to wrap it up. Stay tuned for parting shots. We'll try to get a word in edgewise.
I didn't know how to find a good job,
Start a business.
get insurance, or legal advice.
further my education, find affordable housing for my family.
It is very hard.
That's why we have the New Americans Expo. This informational fair will take place on October 4th
from noon until 6 at the Civic Building in Silver Spring, Maryland. Come and explore. You'll find all the information you need to succeed as a new American.
Hope to see you there.
And now, welcome back with parting shots, Nicolee Ambrose.
My heart is breaking for the refugees streaming across Europe. The sad thing about this is it's a manufactured crisis caused by poor leadership. Had our president years ago actually upheld the red line against Syria, we would not be seeing this exodus today. So it saddens me greatly. It's a human tragedy of unimaginable proportions that we haven't seen since World War II, and we need strong U.S. leadership hopefully in less than a year, to help right our position on the planet and help save hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
Thank you, Nicolee. Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
After today, I'm not certain about us, but anyway, one of the pleasures of being on this show has to do with the wonderful people that I've met. And one of those persons is Jean Rosser, with whom I have developed a close friendship. And I value her and I have always admired her. Well, right now I admire her even more because she's been diagnosed with multiple myeloma. She is dealing with dignity and grace and a smile. I talked to her today and she said she had a blood transfusion. She feels great. If you want to send her a card or call her, she'd love it. God bless you, Jean Rosser, and get well.
Thank you, Susan. Rich Parsons, your parting shot.
Well, I have a short one today. This week, the Transportation Planning Board, whose job it is to do long-range planning for this region on traffic congestion and how we deal with the future job growth that's forecast. Well, they came out with a plan that's now open for public comment that makes traffic 72% worse. That's a plan to get yourself fired in the private sector, and anyone who is thinking about this issue should say, hey, we got to do better than that. And that's my parting shot.
Thank you, Rich. Jerry Cave, wrap it up.
If you step back for a minute, you look at the Republican Party, we have got almost too many well-qualified candidates to be president. The Democratic Party, the problem is a little bit worse. Their leading candidate is Hillary Clinton, and the Clinton people are already in a scandal, and they're not even in office. And we are sick of the Clinton game of first they lie, then they deny, then they apologize, and then they scrutinize.
And then we're cutting
And at
you off.
this rate, you're going to end up in the big house, not the White House.
You can't make this stuff up, people. Thank you, panel, for being here, and thank you for tuning into Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show for 21 this week. I'm Casey Aiken.